Hello, everyone. So sorry I wasn't there today to make it for our midterm study guide review session. I've been pretty under the weather. But I did want to just take some time just to go over a few of the terms. Just in case there are any questions, you can always email me. But just as a reminder, the exam is Wednesday in our normal class meeting, time and place. And the exam format is 50 multiple choice questions. Please bring pencils and I'll have Scantrons. So what I'm doing now is opening the study guide. Here we go. And as you can see, there is a list of concepts and terms. Many of these we've certainly talked about in class. Um, and these are concepts that you will also see discussed in the Zen textbook. Um, so again, for the concepts and terms, I can go through some of these just very briefly. But the best thing to do really is just to go through the study guide and offer a definition for the term, a time period, and perhaps an example. So for the first one, Reconstruction, our class begins with Reconstruction. But if you remember, Reconstruction is an attempt to bring the South back into the war. After the Civil War. The majority of the fighting is done in the South. So the federal government is really trying to utilize its power, its influence, and its money to bring the South back in and to make the South abide by the federal laws. So these are the goals of Reconstruction: to bring the South back in, um, to provide for the immediate needs of newly freed peoples. This is going to include the Freedmen's Bureau and the establishment of immediate aid. Um, Another goal of Reconstruction is to provide legal status for African Americans. So these would just, again, be a few. We spent a lot of time talking about westward expansion, which is a continuous narrative in U.S. history. It certainly plays a very large role in the class so far. As the country moves west, the country is expanding, becoming much more industrial, and is also displacing Native American populations. The 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, these amendments collectively end slavery, provide citizenship rights, and provide voting rights for African Americans. The Black Codes are state laws that are put into place in former Confederate Southern states to try to prevent racial equality and specifically to um, disenfranchise African Americans. We also spent some time looking at the Chinese Exclusion Act. The Chinese, again, are the only nationality to ever be excluded from entering into the U.S. It happens in 1888, and this is the bill that came out of California. But again, the idea behind the Chinese Exclusion Act is that the Chinese do not need to enter the U.S. because of fear that they will not only take jobs, but also are a threat to white women. Socialism, there is, as Zen talks about a great deal in the text, socialism was a very large movement in the U.S. in the early 20th century. A very large economic and political movement. Socialism is when the government is in control of a specific aspects of the economy, such as heavy industry, and helps to regulate it, but there is still private property and there are a variety of political parties. The Gilded Age refers to this time of both immense wealth and abject poverty of the late 19th century. We would have seen the Gilded Age. One example of this are the captains of industry. These are men that become very wealthy in one area because they monopolize or dominate the area. We could look at John D. Rockefeller and Standard Oil. Another example would be our Andrew Carnegie and U.S. Steel. And again, even though there are immense stages of wealth, there would have been at the same time, right? The majority of people living in absolute abject poverty, including immigrants. As you go through these, again, we have gone over most of these in class. But I do want to bring your attention just to a few things. You spent some time looking at U.S. imperialism, and which was very much a product of the Spanish-American War. So pay close attention to that. Make sure you understand some of the ideas and limitations of the progressive era, which is also in the early 20th century. Let's see. And then a few of these down here. The Executive Order 9066, this happens at the end or during the Second World War, and this is the internment of Japanese Americans into concentration camps. Remember that the U.S. is the only country to have ever used nuclear weapons on another people, and we did it twice in Hiroshima and the city of Nagasaki in 1945, instantly killing tens of thousands of people, ending the Second World War eventually. These other terms, such as the Atlantic Charter, Zen speaks about this a great deal. He also talks about the IWW, otherwise known as the Wobblies. These are, this is a labor union. And he writes a lot about the Palmer Raids and Red Summer and the Alien and Seditions Acts. So please, again, take some time to look over, again, the study guide. The best thing to do is to just define the terms, provide a date, provide some sort of example. And again, for the NAACP, you might want to highlight the fact that the NAACP very much worked to achieve racial equality through the court system and through the legislature. This was their specific method for achieving racial equality. Please let me know if you have any other questions, and I'm happy to answer them as best as I can. All right, thank you guys. See you Wednesday.